My name is Jesse Blom. I'm the Executive Director of the Green Heart Project here in Charleston, South Carolina. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about growing food with people and my experiences with community-based agriculture. My story starts in Costa Rica at Earth University. Earth University is an amazing place. One of the most incredible places I've ever been. Students come from all over the world, mostly from small communities in developing countries. They learn how to grow food, they learn how to build and run an agricultural-based business, and they learn how to develop the communities around them. So these students, they're at the university for about 4 years. They work with local farmers. In this picture, we've got Earth students working with a local farmer to install a biodigester, which converts animal waste into cooking fuel. So I spent 10 days at Earth University visiting there, and I was convinced that I was going to do something like this back in my hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I was kind of like this guy here. I was very inspired, but I was totally unprepared for what would happen next. I had no idea where to begin. But luckily, my mom, who's sitting down here, she gave me a magazine, and in the magazine there was an article about a guy called Will Allen. Will was producing fish and vegetables using an aquaponics technique that he had worked on in Milwaukee. He worked with young people, taught them how to grow food at his farm in the central city in Milwaukee. So I showed up, I took a tour of Growing Power, I volunteered there, and it was in fact at Growing Power when I learned about another farm in Milwaukee where I ended up spending most of my time. This farm is called Sweetwater Organics. This farm is located in an old factory building, a 40,000 square foot old crane factory. They dug out 10,000-gallon fish tanks in the ground, and they used that water to irrigate the vegetables up top. I was volunteering here just about every day, and it seemed that just about every day, a whole busload full of students would come and show up on a field trip. They would not always, but a lot of times show up unannounced, and we'd have to figure out what to do with them when they were there, and we started thinking about, well, if all these schools are coming to visit the farm, why don't we, in fact, try to bring the farm to the schools? So we did exactly that. We started installing miniature farms, aquaponics farms, producing fish and vegetables in schools. In Milwaukee and Chicago, we worked on 25 of these projects. This one here is at Bradley Tech High School in a biology classroom. These students also ran a sandwich shop, and they cut the vegetables from their aquaponics system and put them in their sandwiches and sell them to students and faculty. Another one of the 25, Bayview Middle School here, these students spent the whole semester cleaning out an old greenhouse in their school that we used for storage, and they took plywood and they built tables for the vegetables, and they grew yellow perch, delicious yellow perch, in that horse trough underneath the table. So I was doing this. At the same time, I was helping with a community-based farm on the other side of town, on the north side of Milwaukee. Now, this was a more traditional farm raising vegetables out of the soil. These young people here lived in the neighborhood every day after school. They'd come home and they'd come out and visit us on the farm, and soon enough they started learning how to grow the product, how to harvest the product, and in fact how to sell the product. So once a week on Thursday evenings, we'd run a farm stand. These students would put out the vegetables, neighbors would come, they'd buy the food, they'd go home with the food, and these young people would go home with 100% of the profits. So they were learning essentially how to run a local business. It was very exciting. It was a very exciting place to be, but soon enough an opportunity came. My family and I couldn't turn it down. I got invited to run a farm in Baltimore, Maryland for the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future at the Public Health School. So we produced fish and vegetables for the local market. The university students would run the farm, and then school groups and community groups would come and learn what we were doing there. It was a tiny little greenhouse, probably about the size of this stage. And we got 5,000 visitors a year who would come through the greenhouse. They were interested in what we were doing. Chefs, professors, neighbors, everybody would come check it out. So I soon started to realize that no matter where I was in Costa Rica, in Milwaukee or Chicago or Baltimore, that people have a natural draw to growing food. And people are naturally interested in learning as much as they can. And while I was at Hopkins, I learned that the academic literature supports this idea. Now, you don't really need to read this quote. My friend Dave Love summarized it for us. He said, urban farming is about the people, not the plants. That's one thing I learned about over time. And it just so happened that in Charleston, South Carolina, there was a group that had already figured that out. So my wife, my 2 kids, and I moved down here. I took this job as executive director of Green Heart Project about a year ago. It's been inspiring, to say the least, working with this group over the past year. We're in 6 schools now. We grew from 1 school, Mitchell Elementary, where you see these students here. We're now working in 6 schools. 1,200 students is the number of students we reach every year. Students grow the food. They harvest the food. They learn to prepare it and eat it, and we celebrate the food. These students have grown these crops all semester. They've cut them, and now they're getting ready to take them home to their families. It's a really exciting ordeal. So a couple of years ago, we started thinking, so we serve the students from preschool through 5th grade. We started thinking, what happens after 5th grade? Once these students graduate, what's happening in the communities surrounding our schools? And as a result of some of these questions, we had an idea, and that idea is to build a larger urban farm in the heart of the Charleston Peninsula. And so that project is called the Urban Farm at Enston Home. The William Enston Home is owned by the Charleston Housing Authority. It's at King Street and Hugie Street. Most of you probably are familiar with these buildings if you've driven up and down King Street. It was built in the 1880s. It's on the National Historic Register. This is right across from our office. Our office is based across the street now. There's about 80 people that live there, and the Housing Authority has given us access to the half-acre grassy plot in the middle there. We're going to build, we're going to build the biggest project we have yet. So this farm's going to serve the 3 surrounding schools, so it's going to continue to do farm to school. It'll be a community garden for the residents here, and it's going to house our first summer internship program for high school students, where we're going to pay the students to manage the farm. I'm really looking forward to this. So basically, in summary, growing food with people has changed my life. I've seen it change the lives of everybody around me, and I hope that you might consider coming and joining us in the garden sometime and growing along with us. Thank you.